All right, let's just jump right in. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're looking at what is honestly one of the most fascinating and kind of bizarre geopolitical border crises happening right now. And get this, it's being solved not by building, higher walls or digging bigger landfills. No, they're dematerializing physical waste into certified digital assets. I know, it sounds literally like science fiction, but it's happening as we speak right on the US-Canada border. We're talking a massive clash of trade policy, infrastructure exhaustion, and some seriously cutting-edge mobile AI. Let's get into it.
Okay, to really wrap our heads around the scale here, we got to look at the anchor number that defines this whole corridor. 3.46 million. That is the staggering volume, in tons, of municipal solid waste, MSW, that Ontario ships across the U.S. border to dump in Michigan landfills every single year. Just picture that for a second. Every weekday morning, there's just a relentless queue of massive transport trucks crawling across the Windsor-Detroit Ambassador Bridge and the Sarnia-Port-Huron Blue Water Bridge, absolutely packed to the brim with garbage.
And when you actually break down all the waste buried in Michigan, a massive 14.35% of it comes directly from Ontario. So nearly 15% of Michigan's total landfill consumption is literally just absorbing its northern neighbor's trash. As you can probably guess, this creates some intense political friction, but, it also creates this massive economic engine that we really need to unpack.
So here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the border trash war, then the double-sided infrastructure trap. After that, building the Sentient Bridge, followed by the Edge AI compliance workflow. Then we'll cover from data to carbon gold, and finally, securing the circular bioeconomy.
All right, Section 1, the border trash war.
So the sheer scale of the extreme economic arbitrage driving this whole trade, it's just staggering. Up in the Greater Toronto area, the receiving side tipping fee, basically the cost to just dump a ton of trash, sits at a really steep floor of $189.86. But over in Michigan, the accept side fee is anywhere from a meager 36 cents to maybe $5 a ton. Even if Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer actually passes her proposed tipping fee hike to curb all this out-of-state waste, Michigan is still vastly cheaper. And because of the U.S. Commerce Clause, Michigan can't legally just refuse Ontario's waste or discriminate on pricing. So the pure economics just constantly pull all this waste straight across the border.
Moving on to Section 2, the double-sided infrastructure trap.
Now this timeline outlines the totally wild geopolitical and regulatory pressure cooker of year-to-date 2026. Look at January. Ontario had the blue box collapse, which basically ended commercial curbside recycling. Then in April, Ontario Premier Doug Ford signed Bill 5. This bypassed standard environmental assessments to fast-track local landfill expansions explicitly to protect Ontario in case the U.S. border actually closes to Canadian garbage. And honestly, that threat is very real. Washington and the Donald Trump administration are leveraging protectionist trade policies, including these incoming August 2026 Section 338 tariffs that slap a massive 50% duty on Canadian wood. Throw in the ongoing CUSMA or USMCA reviews and this looming 2034 capacity cliff where Ontario literally just runs out of landfill space, well, you can see the problem. The old way of just burying trash is hitting some very hard geographic limits. So how exactly does the logistics industry respond to these tightening trade and capacity constraints? Well, meet the 144 cubic yard mothership. These are these huge 19-ton walking floor trailers that use their massive physical scale to try and bypass border friction through sheer brute force volume. But like we just saw, these physical workarounds are hitting a solid geopolitical wall. I mean, you can't exactly just drive a massive truck straight through a 50% tariff wall, right?
Which brings us to Section 3, building the Sentient Bridge.
Here is where it gets incredibly cool. The tech securing all this international trade compliance isn't some massive mainframe computer sitting at the border. It's happening right at the bin. The 95-wood tech stack runs directly on a Google Pixel 11 Pro smartphone, powered by Android 17 and the Tensor G6 Edge TPU. By tapping into the LightArt AI stack, Gemini 3.6 Pro orchestration, and TurboQuant compression, they've managed to create an automated, zero-fatigue compliance gate that runs 24/7. They're completely replacing rigid, tired human classifiers with a highly advanced Edge AI smartphone application. It is an absolute game-changer for processing physical materials.
So the crucial thing to grasp here is this concept of the Sentient Bridge.
905 Wood operates on a very specific thesis. They don't just move wood, they translate physical matter into highly structured, verifiable, queryable data. It's this dematerialization that lets them legally and seamlessly bypass the crazy border friction and regulatory gridlock we were talking about earlier.
All right, Section 4, Edge AI Compliance Workflow.
Now, this whole process happens in less than 500 milliseconds. First up, multimodal frame capture. The driver just scans the waste pile using the Pixel 11 Pro. Next, the AI runs what's called amber band thresholding. This visually identifies clean wood versus weathered wood that might be hiding chemicals. If something looks sketchy, it escalates to strict TCLP hazardous isolation. That means it instantly quarantines toxic heavy metal contaminants, stuff like arsenic or lead, long before they ever get near the border. Finally, cryptographic hold to seal. The driver just holds a button on the screen, and boom, a tamper-evident cryptographic envelope is sealed with exact GPS coordinates and timestamps.
The ultimate endgame of that quick scan is total compression. We're talking hundreds of hours of regulatory briefings and massive physical loads perfectly compressed into a single, legally defensible digital twin. Their output PDF documentation. And this thing has everything a stakeholder could possibly need: a request for quote and price lock, electronic OREG 347 manifests for local compliance, a zero-levy report card for the auditors, even a Puro.Earth Core C registry entry for carbon credits. But the absolute crown jewel in this document? That's the USMCA Shield Certificate of Origin.
Now, why is that Certificate of Origin so absolutely crucial? Well, here is the geopolitical magic trick. Under the USMCA, or CUSMA, Chapter 4, Verified Clean Wood actually gets classified as HS3825.0. By using Edge AI to scientifically guarantee the load is clean and toxin-free, 905 Wood secures this specific classification, which means legally they just turned a targeted trade commodity back into an exempt residual asset. It entirely bypasses that impending 50% Washington tariff wall. Basically, the AI's verification lets the mothership drive right on through the trade war without a scratch.
Section 5. From Data to Carbon Gold.
The financial breakdown per mothership trailer here is frankly mind-blowing. Up in Ontario, unverified mixed waste gets hit with a steep provincial circle levy of $60 a ton, but AI-verified clean wood? Just $5 a ton. So that verification instantly saves over $1,000 per load in avoided levies alone. But wait, the real magic is the carbon dividend, or cork. By verifying the wood is clean and keeping it out of a landfill, 905 Wood earns anywhere from roughly $2,700 to over $7,600 Canadian dollars in carbon removal credits on voluntary markets, and that's per single load. The economics here are just absolutely staggering.
Because of this wild financial model, 905 Wood has fundamentally shifted its whole identity. They actually operate under a NAICS 51 classification. By using Stripe decoupled billing, meaning they pass the logistics savings right on to the contractor while keeping 100% of those massive carbon dividends to fund their AI hardware, they function as a data and information enterprise. They're not a traditional hauler anymore. They are literally a data company that just happens to move wood. And finally, Section 6, Securing the Circular Bioeconomy. So what actually happens to all this AI-verified clean wood once it's diverted away from the Michigan border and the landfills? Well, it routes straight into the future of industry. The verified clean wood goes to facilities like the Char Technologies Thorold Biohub. There, through high-temperature pyrolysis, it gets converted into renewable natural gas to feed the Ontario grid and pyrogenic biocarbon, which they use for green steel production. By solving the cross-border trade friction and the landfill capacity crisis all at once, this tech feeds right into sustainable industrial leadership. For you and me, this represents a fundamental shift in how global supply chains operate. It proves that we can actually solve these environmental crises by converting raw material liabilities into verified green energy assets.
Which brings us to this really powerful concluding thought from the researchers analyzing this space. 451 briefings, 186 hours, and it all reduces to a single signed PDF. By operationalizing the Pixel 11 Pro and the LightRT stack, 905 Wood turned a sort into a signature. The Sentient Bridge that hands Ontario the circular bioeconomy. I love that. Compressing physical matter into verified data really does perfectly solve the geopolitical threats we're facing today.
And that leaves me with a pretty profound question for you to take away from this explainer today. We've just seen how Edge AI can turn a chaotic dumpster of wood into a tariff-exempt, highly lucrative digital asset.
So in a world of increasingly closed borders and trade wars, what else can we dematerialize? I mean, what other physical bottlenecks are out there, just waiting for a sentient bridge? Thanks so much for learning with me today. Catch you next time.